And we continue today. Is everybody present? Hmm? Can we continue right away, or we wait for others to tune in?
I think we can continue faster.
Okay. So let me go to the text where we finished. I think we have finished here. Due to defiled mind, there is a seer and seen. Thus, the illusory mind grasps the objects, the sphere of objects, which goes counter its equal nature. Grasping goes always counter the equal nature of the mind, because if the mind had no equal nature, it would not be able to accept the non-beautiful object, beautiful object, the objects we want and the objects we don't want, because its nature is equal. Only by grasping it becomes unequal. So it can accept everything. So remember, Sanskrit is a very wonderful language. The sphere of objects mean gochara. It means pasture of the cow. The mind needs a pasture in order to move. But when it moves, it should move based on wisdom, not based on ignorance. But we are based on ignorance because we are grasping. We are grasping, and that which is grasping is an illusionary mind. It is not the true mind. The true mind, especially according to the Yogacara, no matter whether based on Tathagata Karma or based on the alaya, the mere consciousness, same, the real nature of the mind is suchness. And we don't see suchness because we, due to karmic consciousness, we start distinguishing, which comes together. We have learned with the karmic consciousness, we start distinguishing between the seer and the seen. And when we distinguish, which happens in the mind itself, then we identify with the object. And due to this, the equal nature of the mind disappears with grasping at the object. So we have, due to this grasping of the object, the mind has a continuity. We have learned this continuity is explained here as manas, as the organ of thinking, which has 5 names. The first 3 are very subtle. The other 2 are less subtle, but they are necessary to explain the movement of the mind, which is not the nature of the mind, which is suchness. So due to grasping, there is conditionality. The Buddhism is a teaching of dependent origination, right? And this conditionality is, in our case, not objective, it is subjective, because we are grasping what we are grasping on is then the development of the continuity of the mind. So that from manas comes the vijnana, the differentiating consciousness at which we grasp and through which we then evaluate our experience, which becomes purely subjective. So we, what one likes, the other one dislikes, what one wants, the other one does not want. And so we are subjected to our views, wrong views, and to our grasping, because we have lost the uh, understanding of the equal nature of the mind. This is very important to understand. So we are distant from the true nature of the mind, which is nirvana. In Theravada Buddhism, as you may know, normally in the scriptures of the disciples, you don't find the explanation of nirvana as a mind, but the situation changes in the Yogacara Buddhism. The nirvana is the nature of the mind, which is equal and in which there is differentiation, but this differentiation is not to be an object of grasping. So because of grasping, we believe in the real subject and the real object. And the texts say, therefore, you can add into it in substance, all phenomena are already appeased in nirvana. From the point of view of our true nature of the mind, Gensha, all the phenomena are already appeased. But we don't see it as such because of our grasping and wrong views. So they don't have any real, I add to it maybe aspect of arising, the non-science or ignorance, avidya, the literal translation of avidya would be the non-science. We don't have the science of seeing things as they are. In the Theravada, especially, it is emphasized the form is just the four elements, and the co-arising materiality like color and so on, smell, taste, they arise together only with the four elements, never separate. Then the perception is just the taking the form in the mind. Based on that is a reception of the object, which is the sensation. Based on sensation, we react, which is the will and will formations. And based on the sensation and will formations, we then differentiate, which is the consciousness. And because we don't see in this tradition that actually the nature of the mind is already appeased, so this our ignorance is the non-awareness of the true. In Mahayana is emphasized the non-awareness of suchness. in the Abhidharma, in what we may call early Buddhism, what we really don't know, the non-awareness means we don't see a form as just four elements and the co-arising materiality like color and so on. So we have learned that due to our moving mind, our nature, then become the mind alaya, which is the mind dwelling in the world, which is then connected to continuity, which is manas, individual mind, because what my habits are is different with other persons. So because of non-science, there is non-awareness of the true, be it suchness or be it the four elements and the perception just being the taking of the image of as the object, that is perception, and receiving the object, which is sensation, and so on. This is the true. Now, in the Theravada, in some, as I learned the Theravada based on Abhidhamma Sangha, which I had to learn by heart, more or less, the there is not a clear distinction between nirvana and the true reality, like the rupa, like the mind and the mental factors. In the Sanskrit tradition, also the sin putyang yin, that means non, the formations not connected with the mind, like space and so on, or like phenomena not directly linked to the mind, which nevertheless controls the functions of the mind. So the due to non-science, there is non-awareness. So we have learned before that this alaya has an aspect of awareness, yue, and the aspect of non-awareness, yue. So when the ignorance prevail, we will see in the following passages, when the ignorance prevails, then the non-awareness prevail. When the wisdom prevails, then the awareness prevails. And through deepening the awareness, we come to realizations. This non-awareness is in itself of illusionary nature. If non-awareness based on ignorance was true, we would never be able to get any enlightenment. It is impossible. Enlightenment is the opposite of non-awareness. So it cannot be true. So this is why the author says that the dependent origination is true in the worldly reality, but this arising, because the arising is not true in suchness, so in the highest reality, it is also product of our misunderstanding when we take it as something we can grasp. It is beyond grasping. So it is not different from suchness. So worldly reality, as far as suchness is concerned, is not different from nirvana in that aspect that you cannot grasp it. If you grasp it, You only grasp, as we have learned, the you grasp what you cling to, and that is your concepts, which bring stability into that which is impermanent by nature. The reality is a process, and because we grasp the process, we are subjected to delusion. So, so that is why the author explained in the beginning, and we always have to come to the beginning. The mind is the Dharma is one mind, and this one mind is nothing but our Buddha nature, because it is equal and it can accept everything. And this true mind, the one mind in it, that which arises is not something we can grasp or we should grasp. The grasping is something which does not fit into the true nature of the thing. So the text explains, thus the mind becomes unable to engage in all kinds of wisdom in regard to all mundane objects. So we have learned before, please remember always the preceding. That is why it's so important to read this work again and again. We have the we are subjected to ignorance because we have the veil of kleshas, which means the veil of disturbance in the mind, fanao, jang, which is, we have learned, which is the root of ignorance. And then we have the ignorance in regard to the objects, all objects, worldly objects. And so we see the objects, but in a perverted way. So we see that which is impermanent is permanent, that which is subjected to change as lasting, that which is subjected to change and not lasting as being the self. So we are deluded. Now, we have also said there is, especially in Chinese Buddhism, the school of sudden enlightenment and of gradual enlightenment. They come together. You cannot have sudden enlightenment without gradual enlightenment, and gradual enlightenment without sudden enlightenment. And sudden enlightenment is precisely the meditating, taking the things from the point of view of the suchness. From the very beginning, as explained here, everything is equal. And we are disturbed because we don't see the real. So, because we don't see the real, we have a distortion in regard to the object, all kinds of wisdom in regard to all mundane objects. So, only true mind, which is suchness, can know the objects of samsara as they really are. They cannot be, when we understand them, object of grasping. When they are object of grasping, they are created by ignorance. And this is what we should see very clearly. So only true mind knows the mundane object as suchness. We are deluded, so we don't know the mundane object as suchness, so we are clinging to them. So now, after explaining this, the causes of samsara, we have learned being ignorance. Because of ignorance, our mind moves, becomes a karmic consciousness. When there is karmic consciousness, automatically together with it arises the idea of perceiver and the perceived as being something separated. But still it arises in the mind. Which mind? The alaya mind. Then, because we will learn later, I do not want to proceed this taking the object as a real influences us, so that we think that the objects outside are objects of grasping, based on distinction. So from that is a continuity of the mind, which is based on ignorance, not on wisdom. And due to this continuity of the mind, which is explained here as manas, as the organ of thinking or thinking, then we grasp on the six kind of consciousnesses ruled by mental consciousness as being something objective, but it is subjective because it is rooted in continuity of manas, which is individual. A very wonderful explanation, very useful in our time when we are governed by science, and this is a very scientific knowledge. Now, the question is how all this samsaric experience that we are engaged in, how does it work, or how is it possible? So the author continues explaining there are two types of phenomena. Let me see the text. That is, there are two types of samsaric phenomena, not just phenomena, samsaric phenomena, shen mie xiang, or the phenomena subjected to the process of change, to which we grasp due to our vasanas, due to our habit of ignorance. We will learn later that ignorance influences our illusionary mind. Illusionary mind influences ignorance. So ignorance becomes more obvious. Then it starts due to illusionary mind clinging to the object. Then the clinging to the object again influences our thought, and our thought influences again the ignorance. And so we work in samsara. So the ignorance becomes developed. Why? illusionary mind grasping to illusionary objects. Here we are, good morning, in the state of samsaric existence, which is not really existence that we desire, but yet we are in it. We are in it because of lack of wisdom. So there are two types of samsaric phenomena or samsaric objects. We can translate the xiang, which means actually nimitta. So we can translate as aspect of samsaric consciousness, or we can translate as samsaric phenomena, objects. Both is okay, because unless there is some nimitta, some sign of the object, there is nothing to grasp. And the samsaric phenomena are the phenomena we are grasping at. And we are grasping at them because we have this vasana, this latent tendency of ignorance, which makes us rely on illusionary mind, and illusionary mind, relying on illusionary mind, we believe in existence of real objects outside which we can grasp, which we can take for ourselves and enjoy only for ourselves. So there are two types of the samsaric objects or samsaric phenomena, or two types of samsaric consciousness. All these translations are all right. And which two, he always asks. This is a rhetoric question. The first is a gross, and the gross are connected. Connected with what? With duality. We believe that this subject and object, they separated. So subject and objects are different. So due to that, because we take them as something different, then we rely on concepts as reality. That is a Qi Ming Xiang, due to grasping, due to this Zhi Qu Xiang, due to the grasping aspect. These are the gross aspects which appear in the mind due to differentiating real objects outside as separated from the mind. But this, because we take them as something real being there, so we grasp at them, but actually what we grasp at is our concept, which brings the stability and kind of understanding that these objects, they should be appropriated, that they belong to us, and they are part of us. We are in them, they are in us, because we think that the object and the subject is different. So they are connected. Connected with what? Connected with the clinging to the idea of duality. And this clinging to the idea of duality then leads to the aspect of grasping, but this aspect of grasping, then is aspect of grasping to the concepts and to the fabrication of concepts as being a reality. Then there is the subtle one. The second one is a subtle one, which is not connected, not connected with duality, not connected with dualistic mind. This here, Yixin, Puxiang Yin, I understand, is not connected with the dualistic mind. So, so when we understand this non-dualistic mind, then the real appears to us more like a dream, because we understand that originally, actually, the mind has no object, no nimitta, no sign in it, which is worthy of grasping. So we understood that this reality of real objects outside is like a dream, because in the dream we grasp at something which is not real. Actually in the samsaric reality, based on grasping, and grasping is based on our distorted concepts, which we take for reality, then we understand that this grasping is really grasping for something which is not real. So we become Arya, we become noble persons in Buddhism, when we know that the grasping is not beneficial. We don't want to do non-beneficial things. We have to understand that the base for non-beneficial thing is a grasping. Yet in life we have to grasp, otherwise we cannot live. If we don't grasp for the concept of the door, we cannot get out of this room. But this is not grasping, this is knowing. And for knowing, we don't need to grasp. We grasp because we do not know. And because we do not know, we rely on concepts as being the reality. But this is not the case when we become Aryas, or when we have in Mahayana Buddhism realized our faith. Faith in what? In bodhicitta, in suchness. As the Heart Sutra explains, in suchness, nothing really arises, nothing goes away, nothing is pure, nothing is impure, nothing comes, nothing goes. That is Nagarjuna now. Nothing is oneness, nothing is separateness, manifoldness. And this is dependent origination. The dependent origination is based on relations, and these relations, when we grasp at them, they are not real. So at what we grasp is completely subjective. It has no objective ground. And we grasp, we have seen, because we take this differentiation based on the mind moved by ignorance as being something real. So we create the continuity of in the mind on the base of which we judge reality, but subjectively, not objectively. So when the mind is not connected with dualism, so it is not still divided in terms of subject and object. So we can understand that the cause of the moving our mind is the uh, lack of science, lack of wisdom. And uh, we have the cause of our non-awareness is lack of wisdom, and the condition is the idea that there are, the commentary says that there are real objects there to grasp and to appropriate something of the self, belonging to the self, in the self. But such a thing, belonging to the self, in the self, of the self, it is our concept. The reality is a process. And due to grasping into the process, we rely on the concepts of the reality and not on the reality as it really is. The form being the earth, water, fire, wind, and co-horizon. The perception being just taking the sign of the object. When we take the sign of the object, we receive the object. When we receive the object, we relate to the object by will formations. And so we differentiate, but not on the base of suchness, but on the base of the manas of our mind continuity. So this is how we work according to the scripture. So the author continues, besides within the gross samsaric type of mind image, here I translate yang as mind image, there has to be a samsaric type of mind image so that there is a grasping. So this mind image is a gross or subtle. So the mind also becomes a gross or subtle. But when we have the bodhisattva realization, we realize that there is no actually any object outside. So all objects become suchness. So because we hold to that which has no own nature, therefore our purity of the mind gets lost. So within this gross, in order to understand how we work in samsara, we have to, according to the scripture, there is a gross type of representing the sphere of objects, gochara or alambana. That means something we can, according to Sanskrit, alambana means something we can hang our mind on. Gochara means where the cow of our mind can find the pasture. Our mind, because it is not guided by wisdom, it is guided by ignorance. It wants to hang on something. It wants to dominate something. It wants to appropriate something. So this causes a trouble. Now, within the gross samsaric type of mind, which believes in the true objects outside, separated from the subject, there is a gross type representing the sphere of objects. Remember, something to hang on, or the pasture of the cow. Sphere of object of whom? Of the Pritagjana. Pritagjana means in Sanskrit a separate being, but in Pali the Pritak is Putu, Putujana. Putu means broad. What is the difference between the Arya, the noble one, and the common man? The Arya has small anger, the small thirst, the grasping, the small ignorance, but the common man has a putu, has a very broad scale of grasping, anger, dislike, like, grasp, sphere of liking, disliking, and of ignorance based on liking and disliking and grasping to them as being the objective reality. So this is what defines the common man. So he is completely dominated by this aspect of grasping and uh, creating new concepts, which again become the object of grasping, and which again create a new concepts, which again become the object of grasping. And this is how a common man works in samsara. So suppose we become a bodhisattva who has realized the faith, but it is not mentioned here. He talks only about the bodhisattvas, but before he also applied it to the realized disciples. When we are the bodhisattvas who have realized the faith, so our sphere of objects, sphere of mind images, is subtle in the gross, or subtle in gross. Subtle in gross. We have to become the bodhisattvas who have realized the faith, or the realized disciples. Then we understand trouble in the bubble. I like this construction. When we grasp trouble, when we grasp, we not grasp at reality. Shravaka also knows. We grasp at the form, we grasp actually at earth, water, fire, wind, color, and so on. which form make the form, and due to this form we create an image which we think is stable, but this form is always changing. That's why it's called rupa. Rupa implies change, at least in Pali and Sanskrit, not so much in Chinese. Sa does not mean actually change in Chinese. It just means form. So when we become realized Shravakas, or we have realized faith in Mahayana, so we are subtle in growth, we are disgusted with grasping, and we are disgusted with, on the base of grasping, creating new concepts which lead to a new grasping, and so we don't want to work anymore. So this needs a lot of wisdom, a lot of awareness, but this awareness, according to this tradition, it still does not equal the awareness of a bodhisattva who has realized suchness directly. That means who has realized the joy of not being separate with the Dharmakaya, with the true Buddha, with the true Buddha nature. So that's why when we attain the realization of the Bodhisattva, we have attained the stage of pure mind, Qingming, and we have attained also the pure mind implies we have attained the direct knowledge of suchness. So when we have the direct knowledge of suchness, we cannot be separated from the supreme enlightenment, the bodhisattva enlightenment in this tradition. So this state, when we have realized the pure mind, we have realized the first stage of the bodhisattva, and keep on realizing the second stage, and so on, until the last stage of bodhisattva. However we explain, it's explained in a different way in the Chinese tradition, in a Tibetan tradition, the tantric tradition, but never mind, we don't talk about it now. What is important, we are still, even on the first, the second, third, fourth, fifth, up to 10th stage of bodhisattva, we are still in the sphere of growth in the subtle, because we already know this grasping is grasping about the illusionary objects. So we have peace in mind. We may still have some slight disturbances in the mind, but the peace will not be disturbed because we have direct knowledge of suchness. And this knowledge of suchness becomes more and more awareness as we continue from first to second, second to third, third to fourth. The stages of the bodhisattva enlightenment are connected with the practice of the paramis. We will come to it maybe in the later part of our scripture where the paramis are explained. So the subtle is the sphere of the Buddha who can abandon completely the ignorance. That means who can abandon completely the cause of samsara. As we have learned, due to ignorance, our mind starts moving and we identify with that movement. when we identify with a movement, that is ignorance. So so both these types of samsaric minds, that means mind with images, with nimittas, exist on the base of avidya vasanas, on the uh, latent tendencies to ignorance in our mind. And that is to say, very important, on causes and conditions. So everything that arise due to causes and conditions. But we have to become a Buddha to be completely aware which causes and which conditions give rise to what kind of dharmas. And we will not be able to do that unless we have fully realized, as Nagarjuna explains in uh, uh, the Madhyamaka Karikas, the verses of the middle way, that the dependent origination is non-erosion, non-ceased, non-eternal, non-annihilated, non-coming, not going, not to be conceived as one, not to be conceived as many. Can you see me? Okay, can I continue or was it interrupted?
Oh yes, Pastor.
Okay, Pastor.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Pastor.
So the cause here, the cause of samsara is the non-awareness, 不觉. And we have learned that the 不觉 is the non-enlightened aspect of alaya. So the samsara appears due to cause and conditions. The cause is we have explained, is the non-wisdom or non-science or non-awareness. And the conditions is the identification with the illusionary thinking and illusionary objects of illusionary thinking, which make the ignorance thicker and thicker. When these causes and conditions disappear, then the cause disappears, the ignorance disappears, and here we are, the Buddhas, and we understand that in reality, nothing really arises and nothing really goes away. And nothing really comes and nothing really goes. So according to the Abhidharma Kosha, and this has influenced very much the Transcendental or Great Wisdom Sutras, according to the Abhidharma Kosha, according to Sarvastivana, the arising has causes and conditions, and the cessation happens spontaneously, does not need causes and conditions. So this explains that when we think about it, this would explain that nirvana is a natural condition, because nirvana is a cessation of ignorance. Nirvana means a cessation of ignorance. So if the things cease naturally, moment by moment, then it's easy to think that actually the natural state is nirvana, and that is precisely what the sutras of great wisdom say. The nirvana is a natural state. Because we don't understand our natural state, trouble in the bubble. We are in trouble. So we identify with our illusionary thinking. We identify with the objects of illusionary thinking as something being really there outside of us. So we strengthen our grasping. Now, in the Theravada and here also, when the causes and conditions disappear, the samsara also disappear. So appearance has causes and conditions, and disappearance has also causes and conditions. This is a thesis of the Theravada, and this is a thesis of the scripture also. But it is based on a different premises. What disappears is the ignorance in Theravada of the true nature of reality, which is impermanent and so on. But here it is what disappears is the delusion about the suchness. The delusion about the suchness as causes, and delusion about the suchness, end of delusion about the suchness, is also based on causes and conditions. So it is similar to Theravada, but yet it is based on a different principle. In the Mahayana philosophy, especially emphasized in Yogacara, the impermanence also is only skillful means, it is not real. And we should be aware that according to early Buddhism, the meaning of ignorance is the distortion of perception, of views, and of differentiation of mind based on understanding impermanence as permanence, understanding that happiness, non-happiness as happiness, or non as dukkha as sukha. Dukkha means state of impermanence, which is very often misunderstood, and understanding as this impermanence, anicca, and dukkha as being the self. But here, the anicca is also, the impermanence is also only a skillful means for understanding the real mind, which is suchness. The conditions are fabrications of illusionary real objects existing that means existing in their own right, in their own nature, Zixin, Zixiang. With the cessation of the conditions, cease, with the cessation of cause, conditions cease. The cause we have learned is the ignorance, and conditions are the illusionary mind and the creating the real objects outside, the separated from the subject. And here we are. This is how samsara works. So with the cessation of the cause and conditions, the condition cease. With the cessation of ignorance, no more illusionary thinking and no more real objects there based on illusionary thinking. When the mind here is meant, the defiled mind is not connected with duality, the manas, the mind connected, when the defiled mind is not connected with duality in our scripture, it is manas, at least the subtle aspect of the manas. And even in this aspect of the differentiation is still a very subtle aspect in which the duality is not yet fully grasped. So when the manas ceases, that is the mind not connected with duality, the alaya, especially meant the subtle aspect of the alaya, which create the continuity. So this continuity happens in the mind, not in reality as such. And with this cessation of the manas, then the mind connected with duality, which takes this object outside as something real, based on grasping and creation of the concept, this vijnana, this dualistic mind, which is based on continuity, which takes the objects outside as something being really there. It also ceases. So I have written the first, there is ignorance, which creates the three subtle aspects. You remember that is the karmic consciousness, yesh, then the evolving consciousness, juanshe, and then the revealing consciousness, xianshe. So in alaya, you have immediately the three aspects, the Yeshyang, the aspect of karmic activity, which is never separated from the evolving aspect, the Tianxiang, and the aspect of that mind which evolves, which sees the objects as something there, and that is the Xiangfen. Tianfen and Xiangfen. Whenever the mind starts moving, there is this Tianfen and Xiangfen. There is this Darshana Bhaga and Nimitta Bhaga. There is this aspect of the seer and the seen, aspect of the consciousness which evolves due to movement in it, karmic movement, and which it sees as being there. So this first avidya creates these three subtle aspects of the manas, which we have discussed, which are the cause. Then they create the impression of the object being really there, which is either pleasant, really pleasant, or really unpleasant. We have learned all this. And then with the object, the conditions appear, the yuan. And when the objects, when the hetu, the cause disappears, then even these three subtle aspects, the karmic consciousness, the evolving consciousness, and the revealing consciousness disappear. So, what is the state of Buddha? Guess. He does not need any attention. He just reflects the objects as they are. And the mentation process, subtle as well as a gross process of thinking, then is based on an object which is real. And this gives rise to continuity. When the cause of continuity, which is karmic consciousness, appears, and automatically this gross aspect of consciousness, that is the differentiating wisdom, the based on ideas that these differentiations are real, then the aspect of continuity, xiang xu xiang, then from this continuity appears the aspect of grasping and the aspect of creating based on grasping the new concepts and names and syllables, and based on them, then we create the new karma and the new bondage. We have explained all that. These are the six gross aspects of the mind based on these three subtle aspects of the mind, which move the mind and which make the creation, which create the impression that there is a real subject and a real object. So comes a question, a very important question. This shows the misunderstanding which we are subjected to, not being enlightened. We are definitely subjected to this illusionary differentiation. The question is, if mind, that means the alaya, the chitta, the shin, ceases. You remember in this tradition, we have the differentiation between the 8 consciousnesses. First, the alaya, which is called chitta, shin, then the manas, which is called e. We have had this also, but the definition of manas or e is different. And based on manas, the continuity of the mind, we have the differentiating consciousness or discriminating consciousness, they called it. Because we discriminate, we grasp. And we grasp because we have the wrong view. So we are subjected to the samsaric suffering. So obviously an unenlightened person is asking, if mind ceases, and it was explained that the illusionary thinking ceases, and with the illusionary thinking ceasing, illusionary sphere of object ceases. This has been explained. So if mind ceases, how can there be continuity? And if there is continuity, how can you talk of ultimate cessation, nirvana? So what does it mean? He doesn't understand that the essence of mind does not change. What changes is the characteristics of the mind. And he misunderstands, he takes the characteristics for the essence. But it was explained in the beginning very clearly that the essence is ungraspable, unnameable, and impossible to grasp. You cannot grasp the essence. That is why it has a great essence, that is the Tathagata Garbha, which is hidden by our veil of kleshas and not knowing. So, because this essence is ungraspable, unappropriate, you cannot appropriate it, it does not belong to the self, it is not of the self. So also all the phenomena cannot be the self, cannot be of the self, because the essence is cannot be grasped, cannot be named, and that is why it has a great essence. The great is already comparison to the small, as Sandhi Nirmochana Sutra says. The mind cannot grasp the mind, just like finger cannot grasp the finger. No, not finger cannot grasp the finger. Just like the finger cannot point the finger, so the mind cannot grasp the mind or something like that. But the Sandhi Nirmochana Sutra explains it is a small mind understanding the small fa, the small objects, the small dharma. It is not the great mind, the true mind, which is suchness. So here it comes again, the same idea. Just as the finger cannot point to the finger, or the eye cannot see the eye. So the mind cannot see the mind. Which mind? The small mind, which grasp at the objects. And because this mind is not unspeakable, is not speakable, it is not graspable, so it has a great essence as opposed to small mind. It has the essence of suchness, which has the great characteristics and the great application, the great functions. And we have learned all that in the beginning, here it comes again. So the here to avoid grasping as to the characteristics, as to the essence, the author himself asks this question and he answers. What we call cessation is only the cessation of mind images, or hyang, or nimitta, which arise and pass away, not the mind essence, which not really arises and never can cease. So this is a difference in Chinese philosophy coming here again between the Ti, the literally body or essence, and the Xiang, the appearance. The Xiang also means appearance. These appearances arise and cease, but the essence, the suchness, it cannot rise and it cannot cease. So the dependent origination, as we chant every day in the Heart Sutra, is not arising, not ceasing. The five aggregates do not really arise, do not really cease. Where do not they arise? Where do not they cease? In nirvana, and in a non-dualistic nirvana, is understood as suchness. So one who takes these images which arise and pass as a suchness, then he believes that the Buddhist nirvana is a nihilism. Many wise people have this idea. Even this very, very wise Pope in the past, he had this idea that Buddhism tends to nihilism, as opposed to Christianity, which avoids nihilism. It is not difficult to it is not easy to understand Buddhism, and it is quite easy to understand this middle way, which does not arise and does not cease, as being the kind of nihilism, because we are not aware between the images and that which gives rise to the images. So the only real continuity, as we have learned, is based on our non-science or ignorance. No matter whether the object is gross or the object is subtle, it still, the continuity is only continuity of the images, not the continuity of the substance. So we have this comparison, which we maybe discuss the next time. And it came already before. The wind moves the water and the water becomes waves. But the substance of the water is not the moving, but it is the wetness. This wetness, no matter whether the water moves or does not move, this wetness does not disappear. Wherever there is a water, wherever there is an object, its substance does not move. What moves only are the the forms, the characteristics, not the essence itself. So we will see the the wind moves the waves based on water, and so water, the suchness, forms the images, but the suchness, it will be discussed later. We will finish here, then start with the explanation of the example, which is very instructive. The mind suchness and the images that the mind creates on the base of suchness is neither the same nor different. So this is the meaning of the causality. Even in Theravada, the cause and the result are neither same nor different. So there are forms due to the essence, and there is understanding of essence due to the forms, but they are neither same nor different. So the nirvana, due to this logic, cannot be the same as samsara, but also cannot be different as samsara. If it was same as samsara, we would be already all Buddhas, and we would be free from mental suffering, but we still are subjected to mental suffering. If it was different, we would never get enlightened, because that which is different cannot meet each other. So let's come next time to the example which illustrates this, and then we come to this very important part of the scripture, which explains how the samsara and nirvana interact on this base of neither sameness nor difference. So let us hope we get more and more clarity and understand more and more clearly what is being said in relation to what was said before. This is a greatness of this scripture, of always repeating things, but on a different level, guiding us to a deeper and deeper understanding why we are ignorant and how to get rid of ignorance. Okay, so let us transfer merit for the benefit of all sentient beings. Now, if everything works the way it is, I am leaving Nepal on Thursday and go to India, and on Saturday starts my course in India. And so I don't know if I will have time to teach. So let us rest for a week, I propose, so that you can refresh your knowledge, and we will continue our lesson, our teaching after 2 weeks. How about that? As usual on Saturday, usual time. So we have time to think more about. If we have some time during the next weekend, I will inform you and we can do some question and answers. We haven't done it for a long, long time. And then we can fix the time according to the schedule I'm supposed to have in India. So I will inform you when I arrive there, if I arrive there. And then we can have in the circle of friends, we can have question and answers. And 2 weeks later, we start continuing our lecture, same time. Time in India is only 15 minutes difference. So now it's the I have to find out if it is 15 minutes later or 15 minutes sooner, but it is more or less the same time. You can find out the Delhi time and the Kathmandu time. They differ 15 minutes, but I think it is going east. Going east, we are should be more, 15 minutes more, but better we check. The Indian time and the Nepali time, 15 minutes difference. So let us check, and I will inform you if we find during the weekend the time when I on Thursday arrive to India. If I arrive, because I have some problem with the visa right now, but it should be solved because I have fortunately some good connections. So I will inform you what is the schedule and when it should be. Maybe we can do it on Sunday. Let us see. Okay? So let us transfer merit for the benefit of sentient beings. Our time has passed. We have prolonged it because we started later due to my getting involved too much in the speech. Please be aware of the speech. I have to explain to the students the interview and so on, and one gets attached to the speech and forgets about the time. It can happen. So you see, the grasping is not at the really at the reality, but at the concepts of reality which are created by the communication, by speech, sentences, syllables. Okay, let's finish. 愿你这功德普济一切，我等一众生皆空成佛道。May the merits of today's Dharma spread to all beings so that we all attain the state of perfection. So please kindly, this all is connected with what is not explained in the scripture, the three realities in Yogacara, the reality based on fabrication of names and syllables, concepts, the dependent reality, which in our case is based on manas, on the subjective understanding of continuity, which is different with each and every being. And then the true objective reality, which is free from grasping, and which is the dependent origination without grasping. Okay, so that much for today. Have a nice weekend and hopefully see you next week. If not next week, then definitely after 2 weeks. because on Thursday fly faster. There is no direct flight to Kalimpong or Siliguri, where I'm going, West Bengal. I have to go to Delhi, the opposite direction, to go back to the east. So this is a world, because we are not allowed as a foreigners to cross the Indian border in the West Bengal by bus. We have to cross it by plane. Some new regulations